Police officers of Reddit. What are some things innocent people do that make them seem suspicious? Story 1. I've been a cop long enough that I don't try to guess at people's behavior anymore. People get nervous and act weird around cops. My wife cried the last time she got pulled over. Story 2. Retired police here from UK. Innocent people seem to confess everything even when not a crime, as they're so desperate not to be in trouble. Example, knocking on doors for information. Guy answers door and immediately started to confess his tires are a little bald, and he has some dodgy cigarettes, and he did accidents drop some litter. Like, dude, chill out, it's fine. Story 3. I was a fire investigator for a while. It was talking a lot. Now some people just talk a lot when they get nervous, and that's easy to tell. Like those people aren't actually talking about anything, they're just saying words at you. The suspicious ones are the ones who are clearly trying to talk you directly to where they've set up their diversion, but can't just stop talking about it and adding more and more and more details, to the point where they've remembered too much about what happened. Story 4. I was a cop for less than a year, and I'll try to answer this. It's being hostile for no obvious reason. From the temperature in this thread and the other commenters, this won't go over very well because, fuck cops! There's no law that says I have to talk to you. I know my rights. And so on. Whatever, fair enough. But the answer to the question, what do innocent people do that makes them seem suspicious, is exactly this shit. Normally, people who aren't hiding criminal activity treat cops with some arm's-length politeness and basic civility. They don't want to talk to a cop, but they aren't outright hostile, and they'll answer some questions to get the interaction over with as quickly as possible. People who went the top with the hostility for no apparent reason got my attention. Story 5. Trying too hard to clarify or frequently altering small details of their accounts, innocent individuals may inadvertently seem deceitful. Such attempts at precision or credibility often appear as cover-ups to officers, whose training in spotting inconsistencies might misinterpret these efforts as suspicious. Story 6. I was a police officer for 25 years, and it's hard to answer this question. Reactions to the presence of a police officer varies by the person, whether innocent or guilty. It was common for most people to appear nervous and watch me, without trying to be obvious they were doing so. This was especially entertaining in traffic. However, some drivers would keep their heads fixed straight ahead and appeared as stiff as a statue when stopped at a red light. I imagined them thinking that if they did not look at me, I would not notice them. I would sometimes turn my head and make it obvious I was looking directly at them. If they finally gave in and turned their head to look at me, I would smile. I tried to smile a lot to put people at ease. Be yourself, and if you are nervous, you are like many other innocent people. I'm a retired police officer, and I even get nervous while driving with a police officer behind me, edited so someone wasn't confused. Story 7. I'm a cop in Texas. One of the most common things innocent people do is be aggressive when we show up. For example, we get a 911 hang-up where all the dispatcher heard was a male and female yelling at each other, usually at some apartment complex. We get there and don't see or hear any signs of a disturbance. I see a guy walking to his car and ask if he's seen or heard anything, and the first thing he does is start yelling about his right to go outside or some other dumb thing. Even after explaining the situation, some people never settle down from their little tirade. Reasonable and well-adjusted people don't immediately become this standoffish. So it looks as if they're trying to hide something, like being in a domestic disturbance, perhaps. Also, people who walk through neighborhoods at 2 a.m. wearing all black and carrying a backpack. Sure, there's a million innocent reasons for one to be doing that, but I'm still going to stop out with you regardless, because it's my job to be nosy, and it's a great deterrent in case that person was up to no good. Edit. Stop out is a general term, in this case meaning to make consensual contact. I can see how this could be misunderstood. So not detaining them, just making contact. We use the term stop out because generally we're driving around. So we have to stop, then get out to talk to people. Story 8, I'm not a cop, but being visually impaired triggers some police. I have some blurry central vision. Covering my face when spotlighted in my front yard at night and being growled at to drop my hand and me trying to explain the light will cause permanent damage to my retinas. And me asking them to point the light at my feet. Them becoming aggressive and barking, "No! Officer safety," being forced to drop my hand and then my eyes streaming with tears due to pain, and being told I'm suspicious for crying because I must be scared. I was completely blind for 12 days after that, and it resulted in permanent vision loss that left me needing a mobility cane in dim light and the dark and trouble in daylight. I can't handle streetlights, headlights, and some security lights. I was stopped by a cop because of wearing sunglasses at night and using my cane. They had seen me use my phone 3 from my face earlier and decided I was faking my disability. 93% of blind people have some vision. Blindness is a spectrum. Only 7% are in the stereotypical darkness. He accused me of being suspicious and proposed that my cane was for a weapon. I had a safety torch I flick on, thus blinks when I cross large roads. That was for housebreaking, he said. He then ran through a list of my movements stating a blind person couldn't do that. Again, not understanding the disability. A friend has been arrested and had his cane ripped from his hand, and he was dragged to a police e-car as they yelled at him for not cooperating. He couldn't see where they were dragging him. He had the same accusation of intent to housebreak. It escalated when he tried to explain his disability. The judge said his treatment was harassnoid, and the body cam footage confronting. The judge scolded police for ignoring presented medical records showing he was blind. Case was thrown out. Police held into the cane for months. A cane with his IT's tips aren't cheap. I was told after my complaint that they'd sow disability awareness training. Just 2 weeks ago, I wanted to cross a street and a car stopped in the middle of the road a short distance from the intersection. It sounded weird, wasn't in the right position, and I got nervous and decided not to cross and wait. I stepped back and crossed my cane to signify I'm not going anywhere, and for 2 minutes the car revved its engine and I got scared as shit. Finally, it crawled past. I was able to make out the shape of the police car. I wasn't happy. Asterisk apologies for typos. Can't see my phone screen and not near a laptop to write this up. I am in regional Australia. Story 9. I'm not a cop, but I had a cop tell me once that I was acting nervous. Yeah, bro, you pulled me over. I don't want to get a ticket. And I don't trust you or any of your ilk to not start shooting at the slightest provocation. I'm nervous AF. Story 10. This thread contains a lot of bullshit. I am a retired deputy sheriff, and I can agree that there are a lot of police officers that shouldn't be carrying a badge, but what stirs us all up is a person with attitude. To answer the op's original question, people who act suspicious and like they are hiding something make me suspicious. Also, driving much slower than the posted speed limit is something that impacted drivers do. I would usually stop the driver and have a chat. Sometimes they have a medical problem and I may be able to help. Story 11. I've a relative who is nonverbal. They only speak a half dozen times a year. Literally 6 conversations in total. He's intimidated by police and shuts down. He's suffered trauma and something in him broke. He'll write, "I just can't be," as if that will sum up his total collapse. He's been stopped by police out walking, and he uses thumbs up and thumbs down to communicate. He doesn't take his phone as it's his lifeline, and he's scared of it being stolen, so he can't write replies to police. He's had terrible escalation. Threats of being taken under a mental health order because he wouldn't reply. He signed asking for a paper and pen. The cop wrote a message as if he was deaf that made things more difficult, but they wouldn't hand over the phone so he could reply. He reached for the phone, and the female cop in the passenger seat yelped, "No, no," angrily, and rolled her window up. He was left just standing there with no way to communicate. He thought he'd go, and the police car boxed him in, but they still didn't get out. He decided to dart back into the house and got his phone, came out quickly and held his phone out and showed the driver who had done the talking his medical record. The officer didn't believe him and wanted more information. He shook his head no, handed over his ID. Then the female cop said, "Oh," and the driver started saying, "How are we supposed to know? You could be breaking into places? Do you want your house or car broken into? Tell us what you want us to do." The driver then left abruptly. I think a previous cop might have somehow attached a note to his name saying to treat with care, as he had a really nice female cop show him a lot of compassion. And he got emotional about it because he was pretty scared things would go badly. But she proved to him police could be good. My relative didn't leave the house. No outside. No sun for 3 months. He's not autistic, but you'd think he was. And it's a crazy police would see a vulnerable person and think they are being difficult. Story 12. When innocent people readily agree to searches to demonstrate innocence, it paradoxically can arouse suspicion among officers. This eagerness might be interpreted as an attempt to seem overly cooperative, potentially concealing something, thus inadvertently casting doubt on their innocence. Story 13. I'm a male CSA victim, and although it's 30 years ago since the abuse, I can't shake the hypervigilance. So I check my area for safety and escape routes, as my abuser was a teacher who would abuse me at school, but sometimes he'd pick me up on my way home to help with school-related chores. I had a dysfunctional and violent home. He had me terrified he'd phone home and get me in trouble. I was beaten every weekday, but if my teacher manipulated my parents, there's a chance they'd have beaten me to death. Not exaggerating. Because I watch everyone and everything, I used to look for defensive weapons also. I look CSAF. I can understand them spotting me. I just wish they had more empathy or patience when I disclose. I feel like only their PTSD matters, and the citizens' trauma is all bullshit. And it's hard to imagine getting justice for abuse when you're treated like shit. When you tell a cop it's the way you look cautious. I have wondered if veterans have a similar experience, or if they carry themselves differently. Story 14, I am a cop. When I'm asking basic questions, who, what, when, where, why, and you have a 5-minute irrelevant backstory prior to answering a yes or no question. Also, not having reasonable answers to basic questions, and no explanation as to why you can't answer. E.g., woman got her car stolen. When I tried to narrow down a scene and time frame, she couldn't give me a general vicinity, even after I pulled up Google Maps. When I asked for a time frame of when she parked the car and then noticed it was missing, I got a 5-minute backstory on how she had to drop her kids off over here, and then went over there, and then went to this place for a booty call, only for her to provide inconsistent time frames. Do I believe her Hyundai was stolen? It's a Hyundai, so yeah, probably. Was her demeanor suspicious and atypical for someone who had a car stolen? Yes. 2. If I'm parked in a parking lot, don't get out of a car and aggressively approach me with your hands in your pockets to ask what time it is. 3. If you're driving and I happen to turn behind you, and you start making erratic turns, driving in a route that makes absolutely no sense for a person traveling from point A to point B, or immediately pull into a parking lot or driveway, I find that extremely suspicious. Story 15. Former Leo. I can tell you the most helpful thing for you, yet most infuriating to the Leo, is to keep your mouth shut. Just, quit talking. It will be much better for you in the long run. I was never looking to just jam somebody up, but man, people get themselves in so much trouble with their mouth. Story 16. Run. LOL, my friend would see cops and just bolt down the street in the opposite direction after eyeballing them for a few secs. They'd blast sirens, make a UA and drive after him. For nothing, LOL. He just thought it was fun to fuck with him. If they caught up to him, he'd just be like, "Hi, officers. Need something?" They'd search him or his bag, but he never had stuff. Makes good practice, haha. Story 17. I was stopped at customs in England by a John Oliver doppelganger who questioned me for 45 minutes about totally innocuous crap because my face got red, and the more intrusive the questions, the redder it got, and the more he pointed it out, the redder it got. I couldn't help it. Any focus on me causes my face to flush, but this guy thought he caught me doing something squirrely. Story 18. You're not going to get actual cops because reading is hard, but I was responsible for questioning and investigating discrepancies with bank accounts and fraud charges for a while. Top thing is talking too much. There's a point where it stops sounding like you're innocent and starts sounding like you're trying to sell that you're innocent. Story 19. In proactive policing, you're always looking to see how someone reacts to your presence. When someone saw you, are they just 10 and 2 and staring straight ahead? Or do they try to look away? Do they conceal their face with their left arm? Do they make sudden lane changes? Turn down the first neighborhood street they see? There's a level of evasiveness I think everyone has when a cop is either beside you or behind you. However, those can sometimes coincide with the behaviors we try and key in on when being proactive and looking for wanted subjects. A big one for me is if I'm stopped at a light, and you stop a little further back than me on either side. Then, when the light turns green, you wait for me to go first, and then you drive slow to keep me ahead. Normal people will do this too, but it always makes me suspicious. Story 20. State trooper here. Wear warm clothing when it's hot. Warm clothing, like a sweater or jackets, makes it easier to conceal a weapon. So if it's over 80 degrees out and you happen to like wearing sweaters, it's suspicious. Refusing to have a casual conversation on a traffic stop. Sure, you have no obligation to answer any questions, but if I ask you how your day is going, responding with, "I refuse to answer any questions," is weird. Being overly compliant. I stop someone for speeding, and they take the keys out of the ignition, put them on the roof, and put their hands out the window, all without me asking them to do any of that. That suggests to me that you've been pulled over a lot. Story 21. I am not a cop, and I am not a lawyer. Literally anything you do can be considered suspicious to them. Don't talk to them unless you're a victim of a crime. If you are a victim of a crime, only give them the details of the crime. Story 22, cop here. Honestly, it's the shit that seems suspicious to non-cops. People who are bad liars aren't better when I'm talking to them. I've found since the never talk to cops mantra started, it leads to people giving really stilted answers or asking, am I detained a lot? And yes, you are detained. Problem solved. I totally respect people's rights to not incriminate themselves, but it also makes it weird if I'm just asking where you live or what your phone number is for the report. Story 23. As a crime scene investigator who isn't a sworn officer but regularly goes to scenes and interacts with victims, witnesses, etc., these are two pretty common reactions. I see that on the surface always seem so suspect, but I know are usually just nerves during a confusing or frightening time for them. When I have to get a person's fingerprints for elimination purposes, always done by asking consent, some people act nervous and ask if they're going to be put in the system. I always reassure them that it won't, but it always gets a chuckle from me when they realize how it sounds and try to backpedal so they don't sound like they're hiding from another crime. We respond to some cases that aren't necessarily crimes. Most often these are deaths that aren't expected or where the person has no doctor to sign the death certificate. We're there along with the ME just to make sure there is nothing suspicious and things are documented so the ME can sign the death certificate. But families sometimes freak out when they see crime scene units show up and get all nervous asking, "Why are you here? There's no crime here. I didn't do anything." Story 24. Yeah, I'm gonna do the not a cop thing, but this was told to me directly by a cop just last week. The whole, take keys out of ignition, put them on the dash, is not always the disarming tactic you may hope. The first thing he would think is, oh great, dude's on parole. Same goes for sticking your hands out the window. Story 25. One time I was sitting in a coffee shop. Some gun-toting robbers came in and started getting wallets and the till money. This tall, good-looking police detective came in. The waitress poured a whole cup of sugar into his coffee. He usually takes it black. He left, took a sip, and sure enough came in the back door to make arrests. Pretty soon, shotguns and the cops' .44 Magnum were blasting away. Oh wait, that was the whatchamacallit Squint Eastwood Make My Day, so are you feeling lucky punk movie? So in summary, too much sugar in the cops' coffee means we's being robbed. Story 26. One time, I was pulled over, and I always get really nervous if I'm pulled over, or even if a cop is driving behind me. He said since I was so nervous, that was reason to suspect I was hiding something and wanted to search my car. I didn't want any trouble and just wanted to be let go. They obviously didn't find anything, but it felt really violating. My point is, try to avoid looking nervous.